Hello and welcome to this Back of the Net special show. There's a familiar face on screen by the way of club historian Neil Vacher. Neil, how are you doing?
Hi Sam, yeah, I'm well, thank you. And you?
Yes, very well. Enjoying the season so far? It's been pretty good,
What's
hasn't it?
not to enjoy? Yeah, I mean it's been brilliant, hasn't it? And I think that's the key to enjoy this whilst it's going on, make the most of it, and hopefully we can build upon it for the future.
And also we've got Lindsay Sainty, who is the wife of John Sainty, of course, Cherries' hero in the 70s. And he is the reason why we are here today. And in fact, there is a book that we need to talk about. He passed away a couple of years ago. And with the help of him, of course, you contributed as well, Lindsay, and you had a host of contributors to create this book that charts his life.
That's right, yes. It was something that John started right at the very beginning of his career by writing notes on pen and paper with the view perhaps one day of being able to release a book. Yeah. And he continued to do this throughout, really. Then Lindsay took over and started putting these onto the computer and typing them out. And John had always been one of my favourite players in the early 70s, and it was a great pleasure to meet him and Lindsay, and this came up, this subject of a book, and thought, well, perhaps I could help a bit with this as well. So I took it on board as well, and between the three of us, we've come up with this, but the words in there are John's.
Lindsay, it is a really superb read, and you must be really proud when you leaf through it and just reading all these stories about his career.
Yes, I am. As I say, he started sort of when he was 21 writing it, and then when we got together, I sort of delved into it a little bit. Then John turned 70 and I contacted Bournemouth and got in touch with Neil, who I didn't know at the time. And he was very kind and said, oh, come down to the club and we'll look through some photos for John's 70th birthday. Yeah. And I told him we were sort of dabbling in and out with this book. And he said, well, if I can help. And from then on, for the next 6 years...
That's right, that's when it started, didn't it?
We just sort of worked on it, really, didn't we, together? And with John, came to the club a few times, had some meetings, and...
It was a pleasure to get to know John, and it's funny, isn't it? You get an idea of what somebody might be like as a boy from the terraces. Yeah. I imagine John was a bit of a no-nonsense, sort of hard guy, quite a character. He was quite a character, all right, but totally different, and his personality was totally different to what I thought. But it was a great pleasure to get the chance to speak to him.
But he was one of your heroes, wasn't he? That's what you write in the book.
He was, that's right. I mean, the 70-71 promotion team will always have a very special place in my heart. It was the first success that the club had, of course, in the Football League. Yeah. The first promotion, the whole place was buzzing, and John was an integral part of that.
Yeah, because there was relegation just before that, wasn't there?
That's right.
And before he joined Bournemouth, he was at Reading. It seemed like he could have joined Bournemouth a few years earlier than what he did.
Yes.
He had conversations with Freddie Cox at the time, by the sounds of it. But he joined, 1970?
He joined early in 1970 whilst the club was still in the third division. Sadly, we were relegated at the end of that season. But prior to that, John had joined Reading, I think, mainly because it was closer to London than Bournemouth initially. But Freddie had continued to monitor the situation there and was very keen to get John. And it was a very shrewd signing in many ways, really.
And that was when Harold Walker was chairman, and he had a lot of big plans for the club at the time, didn't he?
He had an awful lot of big plans, and we had John Bond come along to replace Freddie Cox as manager. The whole place was buzzing. There was a lot of money spent. I mean, Bournemouth was in the national news then, like a first division club would be. Here we were in the third and fourth divisions for the early 70s. It was a remarkable time, really.
In terms of Harold Walker, there were plans to rebuild a stand, wasn't it, the Brighton Beach End or the Walker stand that was going to happen, that didn't quite. But under John Bond especially, his style of management seemed very different at the time. He was like an innovator, wasn't he? And what was the Coverdale system that he sort of used? What was that all about?
It was all about logic and management, which you could apply either in a business sense or on a football field. And Harold Walker was very keen on it from the business sense. And John took it on board with regard to applying yourself to football skills. It was just basic thinking. People were at training sessions, they'd be sat there with a pile of bricks and being asked to sort of build something from it. And it was bizarre in many ways, but there was an overall purpose to it. It was just logical thinking, and that's what developed the team.
It's clear that both John Bond and John Sainty had a really good working relationship, actually. So they got on really well. And just to go back a bit, he received his football education as a youngster with Spurs. John Sainty, this is, of course. Obviously, Reading, as we've spoke about, played for Bournemouth, was released before an end-of-season party. But this is where, with John Bond, he went on to Norwich, where he got his first coaching position. Obviously, then Manchester City as well, helping to take them to Wembley as well. Went on to Stockport, but also laid the foundation for Saints' successful football academy. And to be fair, it's always been successful. It sounds like football was his life, Lindsay. Did he take it home with him?
Not so much, because I know when we got together, it was Southampton mainly.
Yeah.
So he was at the end of, his sort of career there. So no, and actually he didn't enjoy watching football.
Why is that?
I think because he was a player and a coach, and he used to always sort of say, "Oh no, I'd watch it more than he would." It was strange, really.
But he played with some stars that we all know and love, including Phil Boyer, Ted McDougall. It seemed like he had quite a job to break into that Bournemouth side, but he did. He
did, yes. I mean, I think he realised when Ted and Phil started going together and being so successful, in his words, that they were better together than him and Ted, or him and Phil, and he accepted that. And he was always prepared to accept something for the team, if you like, if he could help the team in another fashion. So John had actually been involved in coaching right from a youngster when he was at Tottenham. As a 16-year-old there, he was coaching the 12-year-olds. So he's always had that ability to coach. And John Bond recognised that, and he gave John more responsibility with the youth team. So whilst John was not playing in the first team as regularly as he had been, he was coaching the youth team alongside Reg Tyrrell.
Yes.
And a number of those young players went on to play in the Football League. Howard Goddard, Kevin Reeves, Ian Cunningham, these sort of people.
Yeah, so it wasn't just a player. He was a manager as well, worked in the youth sides. So he had a lot of experience in the game. At what point was it decided that he would like to write a book about what he's done in football, Lindsay?
Well, as I say, he sort of started it at 21. I don't really know why. His dad had always kept big scrapbooks, of his, when he was a kid, really, at Barking. Was it Barking Boys?
Barking, yeah.
And I don't really know. I just think he wanted to put it down on paper. And he was quite profound in his thoughts.
He was a deep thinker about the game, wasn't he?
He was a deep thinker, actually, yeah.
But he was always prepared to stay in the background. He wasn't one for the limelight.
No.
There's a picture of the 1981 Cup final there with the Manchester City team on the pitch just before they go into extra time, and there's John Bond there doing his usual instructions, and John Sainty has just sort of stood in the background there taking it all in, which was very much his style. And then suddenly he'd chip in with something and people would take immediate notice because they knew if John was saying something, it would be important.
Yeah, I mean, it even says here, after operating beneath the radar for most of his life in football, for once he takes centre stage, and he does with this book. And it's a really nice look through the whole of his career. But sadly, the production of this book could have been stopped short because he passed away a couple of years ago. So how far through the process were you at that point in time?
Think we were more or less complete, weren't we?
We more or less got it together, but we then came up with the idea of getting other perspectives from his teammates and colleagues from other clubs. Lindsay took on
Neil,
that.
you suggested that. You said, well, in light of the fact that John had died, we could have just produced the book as it was. But you suggested perhaps going to get all these memories. I did actually work quite hard.
Lindsay did an awful lot of emailing and phoning around.
I did ring.
Not just with Bournemouth, but with Stockport County, with Norwich, Manchester City, Southampton, and other clubs that John had been associated with. And even aside from football, after he'd ended his football career, he worked at Bournemouth Hospital, and there's some memories there from his colleagues in the dressing room of the hospital, if you like. So Lindsay really took on that task, and I think it's added an extra perspective to it that probably otherwise wouldn't have been there.
So he was signed for about £4,000, I think it said, which is the same price as what Bournemouth paid for Harry Arter. So back in those days, are we saying that he's a better player than Harry Arter? Who knows?
Well, difficult to compare, but he's certainly got other abilities quite apart from his playing side.
Yeah.
Whether Harry's got those abilities or not remains to be seen.
Yeah. So whereabouts on the pitch did he play then, positionally?
Well, he was a striker initially in professional football.
But he got moved back later on, didn't he?
Yeah, he played in midfield towards the latter part of his career.
Yeah.
He was a very adaptable player. In all fairness, he tended to slot in wherever there was the need.
Yeah.
He was a very versatile player. But the biggest irony, if you like, was in the 73-4 season. And of course, halfway through, John Bond left for Norwich. Yeah. A lot of the players went with him. And John was recalled from his role as youth team coach to go straight back in the firing line in the number 9 shirt.
Yeah.
And he ended up the 73-74 season as the club's leading goal scorer.
Yes. Wow. So, Lindsay, you've been to Vitality Stadium a few times watching games and, various different events. Obviously, it's a different ground to what it used to be because it was rotated 90 degrees and we've got this big nice stands now. What's it been like every time you've been there? Because also people like Ted McDougall have contributed to this and he was down recently as well, wasn't he?
Yeah I was happy to meet him again.
He's a character.
He is such a character. You have to really listen, don't you? But he's brilliant. He's a lot of fun, isn't he?
I think when you get people like Ted and others from that period back in a room together. We had a little launch over at the club there with Ted, Keith Miller, had David Stocks there. We've also had Kevin Reeves, Ian Cunningham, and a couple of the youth team players as well who've got good memories of John in his role as their manager. And it was really nice to get them all together again. And the banter immediately starts flowing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so lovely to see, all these memories come flowing, don't they?
They really certainly do. Yeah.
And he was very close with Keith Miller, wasn't he?
They were best friends, weren't they?
Yeah, best friends. Yeah.
Yeah, what a legend, because he was at the event as well. And I had a good chat to him when he was there. That was really, really good. So this book then, Last Man Standing, it is out now, is it?
Yes, it's available now. You can get a copy from the Club Superstore. It's available on Amazon and it's available also from Buds and Beans in West Moors if you fancy going along there, having a coffee and purchasing a copy of the book. So plenty of options.
But also we're giving away a copy on Back of the Net and we're pleased and privileged to do so thanks to Neil. So Neil, how are we gonna work out who's gonna win? Is it has it got to be a competition?
I think
have you got a question for us?
I've got a question.
Oh, okay.
A question for you.
This is tasty.
Okay, in the 1973-74 season.
Yeah.
Which club did John Sainty score a hat-trick against for the Cherries? He only scored the one hat-trick, and can you name the club that suffered?
You know what? I read the chapter on this and I've forgotten already. So this is interesting. Okay, if you know the answer, what you can do is send it as an email to info@afcbpodcast.com. The reason why we're not going to tell you to put it in the comments is because everyone's going to copy each other. So look, there's a way to work out. Send it to info@afcbpodcast.com. But look, we're also going to put this on social media as well. So check out our socials as well for another chance to enter. And I absolutely love the production of this. And you've done a few things with Pitch Publishing now.
Yes, this is the second book I've done with Pitch. I did the Ted McDougall book back in 2016. McDougall. I wonder where I got that idea for a title. And of course, there's also a club history book available in the Club Superstore, 125 years of AFC Bournemouth, which I also completed recently.
Yeah, absolutely superb. Really like that. So if you want to get your hands on a copy of that, then it is so worth it. We'll also pop the links in the description down below to the link on Amazon and also the details on the Pitch Publishing website. It's funny because you talk about John Sainty and a lot of people, I think in many ways, a lot of people remember the big names from that team, but he was an understated player of that era, but so important for it, wasn't he?
He wouldn't be the first name that you would remember, I think it's fair to say. But when you look a little bit deeper into it, you can see just what an involvement he had.
Yeah.
And he was an integral part of that early success in the 70s. And, the ability he had took him onwards to get a career as a coach and assistant manager at Stockport, where he had success with Danny Bagara and Dave Jones.
Yeah.
And then at Southampton, he joined originally as assistant manager and then reverted to academy director. And whilst he was there at Southampton, players of the likes of Theo Walcott, Adam Lallana, Gareth Bale, they all passed through the academy.
Yeah.
And John did a great deal to set up what is still currently the basis of their academy.
And have you found, did you find it quite, cathartic process putting all this together? Obviously, after him passing away, obviously the grief and all that kind of stuff, you're dealing with that.
Yeah.
But then these memories must give you a lot of, joy.
Yes, and particularly phoning and speaking to all the people that put the memories in. They were so helpful, so kind, so prepared to go the extra mile. It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I don't think John ever realised just how much he was thought of, which is often the way, isn't it? You know.
Absolutely.
He always used to say to me, we had the odd person pop along to the house and knock on the door and ask for an autograph, and sometimes at the ground.
That's right, yeah.
And he'd always look at me and say, I don't understand that. That was years ago. I played. But, he was popular. And he just didn't get it. But I think he would be shocked to see some of these recollections.
Yeah.
I'm very happy, I'm sure.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Well, it's a really, really good book, and recommend you check it out. Like I say, links in the description, but make sure you enter that competition as well. All the details are below. Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Neil, it's been a pleasure, as always.
My pleasure.
Hopefully we'll be lifting a cup soon. Right?
Let's hope so. Let's make history at the weekend. Third time lucky.
Fingers crossed. Okay, up the cherries, and we'll see you in the next video.